All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And of course, we have Brother Jacob Prash. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing well in Jesus. You'll be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. But be not afraid, for the end is not yet.
Amen.
These things must take place.
Amen. And Jacob, thanks for being with us. So blessed to have you here. And we're also blessed to have, we're also blessed to have another brother from the Netherlands, Gert. Gert, how are you, brother?
Yes, I'm very fine. Thank you so much, Marco.
Yeah, Gert, thanks so much for being with us. And we were trying to get you on. I know you got some personal things going on. So praise the Lord, you are here with us. I'm so blessed to have you. So blessed to have Jacob. So blessed to have all those who are watching live and those who are watching later. And it's so good. So we got so much stuff today. We want to get to it. We also need to discuss a few things just before we get started, just announcements. We get it out of the way and make sure everybody knows who Gert is. He's Moriel Europe. He's an administrator for Moriel Europe. He's an elder at a church in Netherlands. And Gert, anything else you want to say about yourself, the ministry there, and some of the cool things, some awesome things the Lord's doing in there?
Yes. Thank you so much, Marco. Well, first of all, the pleasure is all mine. It's a real privilege, to be live on with you, such a great man of God, because I really admire, a ministry like Moriel. We have not enough of those ministries worldwide. So it's a real privilege to be a part of that, first of all. Thanks to Jacob and to the elders, the board members, Marco, and also David Lister and Blair Woe, and all the others, involved in the ministry worldwide. It's just a privilege, to be a part of such a ministry led by God in these perilous times, really. Yes, there's some really nice things going on here in Holland. We finally got a nice place where we can restart our services. We will restart our services on the 25th of September, and it will be bi-weekly starting at 5:30 in the evening. So I was asked to also announce it in Dutch.
Oh yeah.
Dus voor alle Nederlandse kijkers, mocht je er nog niet bewust van zijn, er is dus ook een afdeling van Moriel International hier in Nederland, genaamd Moriel Ministries Europe. En wij zullen dus vanaf zondag 25 september onze diensten gaan herstarten. We hebben een tijd stilgelegen, onder andere door persoonlijke omstandigheden, maar ook door de maatregelen natuurlijk tegen COVID-19. Maar God is getrouw en goed en genadig. En 25 september dus, zondag 25 september om 5:30 s'avonds en dan elke even zondag daarna zullen wij onze diensten gaan houden in de Koningskerk in Rotterdam-Zuid. Dat is op de Stieltjesstraat 30 in Rotterdam. Voor vragen of voor informatie kun je altijd even gaan naar de website moriel.nl. Dus dat is www.moriel.nl. Yes, thank you.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Gert. So blessed to have you. And more information, go to the Moriel website. And Gert, you guys have a website, right? Moriel Europe, there's a website. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I just announced it's moriel.nl. Yes.
Awesome. And then you can go through it on the Moriel website to moriel.org. So lots of information. If you want more information, contact them. Contact Gert by email, and he'll be happy to get back to you. I haven't been there, but I've been through Zoom, and I've spoken there at the church. Lovely church, wonderful. God's people are there. So keep praying for them. It is amazing what the Lord is doing in the Netherlands through Gert and through the ministry there. So God bless Moriel, Netherlands. Jacob, you got something too. So let's deal with that, because you're going to be speaking somewhere on Sunday.
Yes. First of all, dank je veld to our brethren in Holland for joining us. This is the first time we've had Gert. We've wanted to have him before. And we also have a Dutch channel with Moriel material on RTN, which people can watch. It's in Dutch, and also Flemish people. And if they listen very carefully, South African Afrikaans can understand some of it. So, and we also have people who follow Moriel teaching in Dutch down in Aruba and in the Caribbean and in Suriname. Not many, but they're there, and there's certainly one church. I know the pastor. So when we say Moriel Europe, okay, it's Europe. We have a little branch in Denmark with Ule, of course, but it's mainly based, and we have the Republic of Ireland, which is also EU, but it's mainly based in Holland. But when we say Holland, or the Netherlands, as they say it, we don't just mean Holland. There are Dutch-speaking people in Belgium, Flemish, in South Africa, the Afrikaans, in Suriname, in Aruba, and various other places in the Caribbean, San Martin. So welcome and blessings to all of them. I will be speaking Sunday, the 7th of August in England, in the East Midlands, in Alfreton at Watchhorn Methodist Church in Alfreton. Alfreton is where the A38 and the M1 come together, just north of Nottingham, very close to Nottingham. So if you are in that area and you don't have a church, we'd hope to see you 10:30 a.m. this Sunday, the 7th, at Watchhorn Church in Alfreton. They have a website. See you then if you can make it. That's in the East English Midlands. Meanwhile, let's get on with what's happening in light of Scripture. Marco.
Amen. Thank you, Jacob. And so if you're there, get a hold of that. Get a ticket, get somewhere, get to a Bible study, and Jacob's going to be teaching there. So get to it while you can. We're going to go through the podcast real quick before we get started. Before I forget, podcasts have been doing so well. They're so popular. We just remind everyone, if you wanted to share with your friends, with your loved ones, even with your enemies, send it to someone, and you can get to the podcast through the Moriel website, but you have access to it on the Moriel channel too here on YouTube. You can go on the About channel. You can find all the links. Jacob's on there. And tomorrow he's going to be A Table in the Wilderness. I haven't listened to that one in a while, Jacob. That's going to be tomorrow on podcast, and yours truly will be on James chapter 5, Elijah, a picture of the end times, man of God. And then on Monday, this episode will be on podcast. And then Wednesday, Sandy Simpson is doing his discernment teaching. This is the sermon in the church. This is part 2 from last week. And then Jacob's back on chapter 3, part 1. And I just want to make sure we clear the air. If you want to hear the live ones and watch the live ones, go on YouTube on Thursdays. Go to our channel Thursday about 11 o'clock Pacific time here in California, and you'll be able to find Jacob teaching on Romans on the current. It's going to be live, so he's on Romans 8 and 9 right now. I believe you finished chapter 9, Jacob, yesterday. I'm sorry, was it yesterday? Yeah. Did you finish chapter 9? Yes. Okay. But if you want the older ones and you want to hear audio, they're not that old, but they're just Romans chapter 3. They're on podcast. So if you want the live ones, you can go to YouTube as well and watch those live, or you can also watch the videos there. But if you want some of the podcast audio, they're there. Romans chapter 3, part 1, and it's a great chapter. And then on Friday, Jacob, Devil's Algebra, part 2. So we haven't listened to that one in a while, but that's a great study. Devil's Algebra, that's a great study. It's one of the first studies I ever hear from Jacob. So it caught on and it grew on me. So praise God for that. I think that's all. Gentlemen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So
I'm ready.
Let's get catching up with Jacob. I'll set the stage. You guys comment, and we'll go from there. And so there's some interesting topics here. We got a lot loaded, so let's get through it. Obviously, this week, Jacob and Gert, we had major news coming out of China, coming out of the Taiwan Strait, coming out of Taiwan. Our illustrious Speaker of the House, third in command, Nancy Pelosi, if you could believe that, was the center, the center of a lot of controversy, the epicenter of all these things going on. She was visiting Taiwan. She was warned by China not to go. She still went. She was watched. She was kept from flying out of Taiwan until they opened a corridor. But it just unleashed a series of events that we're going to be talking about today. China's on the prowl. They now have the excuse to go after Taiwan. They're shooting missiles over Taiwan into the Sea of Japan. Pelosi was there. I don't know, she was on Adderall or something. She looked like she was either half drunk or on Adderall. Couldn't make any sense of what she was saying. It's sad to see someone being put in that situation to almost start a war, but nonetheless, she left. And so here we are with the aftermath. China and the U.S., not a good relationship right now. There's been some rumors of economic fallouts, tension in the South China Sea. So we'll start with Jacob real quick. Jacob, what are your thoughts? I know it's loaded, but I just had to give it to you and the whole enchilada right away before we get started. Your thoughts on this?
The whole enchilada is right. There are multiple aspects to the issue that you've raised, which is, of course, on the front pages of the global headlines. You couldn't understand what Nancy Pelosi was saying. Either could the police when they pulled their husband out of the car drunk at the collision in California. They just switched the judge today, and they got a Democratic Party member who's a judge.
Wow, man.
The corruption that goes on and the perversion of justice is unbelievable. When people like Clapper and people like Holder and people like Hillary Clinton are not even indicted. It just shows you the corruption of the system. But what is politically expedient, people are indicted, going after their political opponents. It just shows you the complete breakdown and corruption of the judicial system and the wickedness of the government. But be that as it may, let's go back to the issue of China. We have to understand that there are two things happening simultaneously. Two things. One, the situation with China's economic crisis. As I pointed out 2 weeks ago, I said, yes, the real estate bubble, like what happened in Japan. Yes, government debt. Yes, local and regional government debt. Yes, corporate government debt. But I said some years ago, watch the shadow banking system. When that goes, it's going to go. Now, the signs were building up, not just with Evergrande. It began 2.5 years ago when the Chinese stock market crashed and the government just closed it down and told people they couldn't sell their shares. That was a forerunner of what's happening now. It's a serious issue because it leaves local and regional governments broke. Their income depends on this kind of freeholding system they have to the real estate developers. In 2008, with the disaster brought on America by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, for which Chris Dodd, the senator, Barack Obama, Barney Frank, Cuomo, and of course the Clinton administration were archly responsible. But Bush supported it. When that happened, the banks could actually grab assets. They could foreclose on mortgages and take homes and sell them at auction or whatever.
Yeah,
in China, you can't do that. The banks can't do that because the things haven't even been built yet. It's become so bad in China that local governments cannot afford to buy stationery.
Yeah.
You have a QR code on cell phones, and I've been to China a lot of times. You have a QR code on cell phones that you need to go on public transport, that you need to get into shopping malls, etc. And if it's green, you're not a high COVID risk. If it's red, you are. What they're doing is just changing the codes of people with bank accounts from green to red so they can't go to the protests. The army has been called out in certain cases with tanks, reminiscent of Tiananmen Square, but also they took police out of uniforms, put them in unmarked white shirts, and used them as gangs of thugs to beat up the protesters wanting their money. This is quite serious because it has begun to affect the 4 big banks, including the ABC, the Agricultural Bank of China, that are government-owned. This makes it not just a banking crisis, but it can become a monetary crisis, a run on the yuan, on their currency. It is a bigger deal than anybody wants to admit who's associated with the party inside China. Now, I don't believe there's going to be a collapse of the Chinese economy, but I do believe part of the Chinese economy has already diminished and it cannot go back to the way it was. The private sector entrepreneurs, people like Jack Ma, their day are over. The super rich Chinese got their money out already. Everybody else is stuck. You know, it's like here with Manchin is going after the middle class now with him and Schumer are trying to get the money out of the middle class. Well, China's the same thing. The rich have already got their money out. They've gone to Vancouver and put their money into London and California. So it's a mess. What does China do when an economic crisis threatens political stability? They don't want another Tiananmen Square. Well, they stage a conflict. They've sent military forces again into an area that is Indian territory adjacent to Tibet. And don't forget, Tibet, as far as Tibetans are concerned, they're living in an occupied country. Okay, so it's with India. It's threatening Japan. And above all, it's Taiwan, but it began with China building military bases on internationally claimed islands in the South China Sea, and they were allowed to get away with it by both Bush and by Obama. The only president who in any way stood up to them was, of course, Donald Trump. So this is what you've got. China has to wag the dog. It has to generate an external crisis. As I pointed out several times, this is what they did with the Cultural Revolution. When it threatened the power of Mao and Zhou Enlai and so forth, in the late 60s, they staged a shootout with the Soviets on the Arma River, another communist country. And they did this during the Vietnam War when both countries were backing North Vietnam. When China is desperate, it'll do the unthinkable. The party will go to the most desperate of lengths. Now, to understand China, as I pointed out, you want to know, they become predictable. If you read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, Chinese strategy is always predictable. To those who understand Confucianism and those who understand Sun Tzu, they're rather predictable. In fact, they're very predictable. The issue to them is not primarily Taiwan and their claims on one China and sovereignty over Taiwan. That's been going on since Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. It is the need to exploit this to artificially unite the country using patriotism and nationalism in the face of a manufactured foreign threat to consolidate some kind of national unity at a time when the economy is threatening to tear the society and regional governments apart. That is why they're making such a show of this. Second aspect, they're left with egg on their face. They didn't shoot Pelosi's plane down. There was a standoff with the Americans, and let's face it, they blinked. Whatever you want to make of it, they didn't do what they threatened to do. This leaves them looking weak if you understand the Asian mentality. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. They have lost face. So now they're throwing a tantrum and trying to show themselves as strong.
Yeah.
What is ironic about this is that as the congressional elections approach in November in the United States, the Democrat Party is in the same kind of dilemma over Afghanistan. They lost face. They have to try to make themselves look strong. When you have a Pentagon that says their defense priorities are global warming and inclusivism, in the face of an increasingly militant China, Iran, and Putin, you got a problem. Tens of thousands of Russian troops. Nobody knows exactly, I don't think, but it's certainly in the tens of thousands of Russian troops have already been killed in the Ukraine. The majority of those were killed with American provided hardware, trying to look tough in the Ukraine. Secondly, after 20, it took them over 9 years to get bin Laden. It took them 20 years to get al-Zawahiri, but they finally got him. Make a big show of it, okay? Yeah, we left Afghanistan, but we can still go in there and get al-Qaeda. They have to make a show of it. Taiwan, the same. We have to make a show. You're not going to intimidate us. Nancy's going to go there. Now, it is not improbable that this stuff of the Pentagon and the White House urging her not to, and her going anyway, that may have been military disinformation to throw China off. Is she going to do it? Is she not going to do it? That may have been military disinformation fed to the Chinese. I don't know. It would make sense if it was.
Yeah.
But from their perspective, now they've lost face and they have to try to look tough. And they have to try to look tough at a time when they're getting into serious economic trouble. China was building cities. I mean, cities with huge skyscraper apartment blocks. They were building cities of 1 million people, a month. Can you imagine building a city of high-rise apartment buildings every month? You're building one and now they're blowing them up. You can actually watch video clips of them detonating, imploding the buildings and knocking them down. The private economy is over. That 25% of the economy that drove the rest of it is over. Don't forget, it was the private sector economy that funded the rest of it. The other 75% is government-owned industries, and those are money losers with huge, huge debts.
Yeah.
With the private sector gone, they're in trouble. Jinping wants to be president again, but this is the biggest mess they've had since Tiananmen Square, and economically, it's the worst mess they have ever had.
Yeah, and he's got the convention. Yeah, he's got the convention coming up this month, so I don't know how much confidence he's going to have. Let me go to Gert real quick. Gert, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, there's a lot going on in China, a lot to unpack. But if you wanted to focus on a certain area, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, it's of course, China has been claiming for years and years. I think Taiwan was founded in 49, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And since then, they've always been considering it as they say, a rebellious province. Really, is that the word in English?
Yes.
Province. So yeah, I'm just. Can we be surprised? That is the thing. As Jesus is coming closer, you know, of course, the Great Tribulation coming before that. It's just, for me, it's just not a real surprise that now things are getting real tense on that. I'm not much, you know, I'm not really aware of much details. But yeah, I'm not really surprised that things are going to, you know, to a high tension now. It's just, I think it's inevitable somehow.
Okay. There's a book, and I showed it to you guys earlier. The Unrestricted Warfare is basically China's master plan to destroy America. Now, it was written by 2 Chinese generals. Some people have, you know, basically said that the book is false, but there's a lot of true information that people have checked, that the fact there's factual information. And there was this general, I think General Cho, that talked about in 2004 about the unrestricted warfare using biological, chemical warfare against the states, against Taiwan, against Japan. Ultimately, what is China's end goal here? Jacob and Gert, whoever wants to take that. They want to be the superior race that they claim. They want to invade the U.S. They have plans 2035, it's one of their plans to maybe move up the timeline, if you want to call it that. But they have economic problems, they have currency problems, they have real estate problems, they have an unstable government at this point, because I don't know how much fanfare Xi Jinping is getting right now. But what's their goal? I mean, the reality is, if you want to look at scripture, it's where does China fit in scripture? I guess I could put it that way, and as an end goal.
People have speculated about China. Hebrew is called the land of sin, but it's very difficult to identify them with any kind of anthropological or geographical certainty. These are the armies from the east and so forth. What is obvious is that China had a growing church. After the first missionaries basically came with Hudson Taylor, there was no more than 1 million Christians in China. But even in the Cultural Revolution, under persecution, the churches grew and continued to grow and blossom. China had the largest church growth among born-again Christians in the world, and its house churches. You had state churches licensed by the state that could be controlled politically, but the independent house churches they could not control. And then you had the crackdown and the persecution of Christians. We have to understand, first of all, it is a demonically animated attack on the body of Christ and the growth of the gospel. The party itself is committed to self-preservation at all costs. The communists in Vietnam similarly, but in China, somehow associate the collapse of the Soviet Union with Christianity, particularly the growth of evangelicism, and then having had a pope that was from Poland. They see Christianity as having had a role in the collapse of Soviet communism. Hence, they fear Christianity. They fear anything they can't control. Okay, that is their mentality. Additionally, Chinese nationalism has a long memory. They remember the Boxer Rebellion and how the British introduced opium and heroin and got control in the Boxer War in Canton, and how the British got Hong Kong, how they were humiliated. They remember these things, and they remember what the Japanese did to them in Nanking, particularly the genocide in Nanking perpetrated by the Japanese. The Chinese hate the Japanese. They hate the Japanese more than they hate the Americans. Okay, that is another thing. The long memories. We want to pay back. We want to pay back. But not least of all, they remember Marco Polo. They remember when China was technologically superior to the West. Much the same as during the Crusades. The Islamic world was technologically and scientifically superior to Europe in the Dark Ages under Roman Catholicism, under the medieval papacy. You know, the Muslims, the Arabs had their golden age in mathematics and astronomy and chemistry and in engineering. The Crusades copied these things and brought them back to Europe. Well, so too in the Dark Ages. Europe was in the Dark Ages. In the Renaissance, we forget China gave us everything from pasta to paper to gunpowder. They were technologically superior to Western Europe. Much the same as Europe had to go get its learning from the Arabs, from the Muslim world, or its technology and science from the Arab and Muslim world, and what was left of the Byzantine world in Istanbul, Constantinople. Marco Polo brought this stuff back from the Far East on the Silk Route, and China has rebuilt the Silk Route. They want to be able to circumvent the capacity of the American Navy to block the Straits of Malacca and other strategic points so they can, by land, transport goods to and fro Europe and have access to the oil and natural gas basin of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and the other countries around the Caspian Sea, following the old Silk Route back to Marco Polo. China has a very long historical memory. Unless you understand its history, going back to the Ming Dynasty, going back to the period of the warring states, unless you read Sun Tzu, and unless you understand Confucianism, you cannot understand China. But if you take the time to read and learn those things, it all makes perfect sense what they're doing. You can call the shots before they take them. That is my perspective. I have a daughter who speaks Mandarin. I have a niece who speaks Mandarin. Unfortunately, I myself cannot, but I wish I could.
Gert, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, economically, their end goal, the strategic warfare. We can go all kinds of places with that, especially with the last 2.5 years. With viruses and some of their involvement in it. But what are your thoughts on their end goal here?
For me, it's still speculating, Marco. But I truly do believe that in the top of the Chinese government, they just want to occupy Taiwan again. They really believe that it's part of China, really. And I think that I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that even they accomplished that a lot of countries worldwide don't even acknowledge Taiwan as a independent country. I do believe that their end goal is just making Taiwan Chinese soil again. That's but I'm not really into detail, but that's what I really believe. Yes.
Yeah, and how important is Taiwan? I mean, we're talking about leading semiconductor in the world. It's probably the most.
Well, there's a lot of production comes from Taiwan.
Yeah.
So of course, nowadays I think more than 60 to 70% is produced in China. Exported, so and Taiwan, well, basically, of course, is Chinese people, of course, although they're seeing themselves, of course, as a different country. I think there are, we would call them dialects, but they are so different that in a sense they would be real languages. I think there's more than 1,000 languages, in those areas, China and stuff. So yeah, Taiwan. It's an independent country, but I don't think that's you ask me what is the end goal. I do believe that China will want to occupy the whole of Taiwan. Of course, there's a lot of obstacles, with America, and so it's just for me and Marco, really, it's just all those things like Jacob was saying when we were talking before, rumors of war and wars. So we're just for me, it's just so obvious signs of the times that we are living in.
Just to add more to the pressure and the difficulties of our world, you have this situation, the South China Sea. And China's not moving. It's not moving its destroyers into the Pacific, using as an excuse to perhaps take over those islands that are being disputed in the South China Sea. But definitely Taiwan is a big deal in terms of semiconductor. Obviously, ramifications of China goes into this blockade, and they don't want to trade with other countries. Then you got pharmaceuticals that are at risk. It could be quite a number of things that could happen economically in the world, because China is the producer of quite a bit of things, from clothing to pharmaceuticals. So this thing is far from over. And definitely we've seen today some missiles shooting into the Sea of Japan. So it could get other countries involved. So much to say about that. But let's move on to the some of the subject at hand that we have here is the reality U.S. military, right? So we talk about the militaries around the world. They see the threat of Japan, of China, and obviously they, at least in this country, they don't seem to be so concerned about it because they're more concerned about attending drag queen shows and LGBT and be able to have your pronouns. And recently they put up another event by the U.S. military that is promoting, again, for families, drag queens and LGBTQ plus, all those things. So how ready would it be? I mean, can't imagine military around the world. Sweden is promoting LGBT stuff, saying that they have to defend gay pride as much as they defend their country. Our military is woke plus. So I don't know. They see this, the East sees this, and they laugh about it, because what kind of a military can promote these things and yet go to battle and go to war against countries that have been training for a long time, but their end goal is to defeat America, et cetera, et cetera. So this definitely, homosexuality, LGBT has permeated all parts of society, including military. Jacob, real quick, what do you think? Military woke plus?
Absolutely. But what do you expect when you have a joke as a commander-in-chief, a senile old whatever he is, and you have a complete clown like Austin as defense secretary, a complete clown, a cheap politician general like Miley, who I think ought to be court-martialed for communicating with the Chinese government against Donald Trump. That man should be court-martialed and conceivably face a firing squad, or at least die in Leavenworth, stripped of his rank. This is the kind of joke you have. I believe these things are God's judgment on the Western world and on America. I believe these things are God's judgment, following the patterns of the Old Testament judgment. The enemies become emboldened when they smell blood and they see the weakness. This is what you see happening. Now, let's look very briefly. There are two things that should be pointed out. China follows Japan in a way, because when Commodore Perry came to Japan industrialized, became from a primordial fishing and agricultural economy with shoguns, run by shoguns. It became an industrialized country within one generation, acquired everything from the West, from America. Then, when the warlords came, turned against America, invaded China, invaded its neighbors, and then was forced to re-Americanize in the face of the threat of the communists. Okay, China's the same. What Perry did in Japan, Kissinger did in China. They wanted China to attack North Vietnam, which they did and lost, and they wanted China to be on the side of the United States against the Soviet Union. They wanted to outflank the Soviet Empire and bring it down. They made certain decisions which seemed to be strategically correct at that time. Much the same as when they backed the original Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the Russians, when the Russians invaded Afghanistan. But these things have a way of backfiring long term. The short-term strategic advantage can backfire. You're not creating an ally, you're arming a future enemy. That's what happened in Afghanistan. That's certainly what happened with Japan. That's what is happening now with China. Yeah. You have to understand that. Secondly, you can see in China, everything is in Chinese and in Mandarin and in English. You can see in China, white and yellow only, no blacks. In restaurants, in stores, they won't let black people in. They look down upon blacks as genetically inferior. China is with Belt and Roads, that is recolonializing Africa. The Europeans, the French and British are long gone. Now China is buying Africa for $2.50. I saw what they did in Zimbabwe after Mugabe destroyed the country and its economy. The Chinese came in and began buying cheap and building. They want the mineral rights. But to them, it's colonialism. They look down on blacks as being inferior. It is like apartheid in South Africa. It is like the old Jim Crow of the American South. The black man is seen as genetically inferior. Now, when one American from the NBA stood up and talked about human rights in China, LeBron James said he was being hurt spiritually. LeBron James is woke and he bends the knee, but when it comes to his business deals with China, he doesn't care about the apartheid and the white only and the Jim Crow. LeBron James is just a stinking hypocrite on steroids. I don't know if he actually takes steroids, but that would account for his level of hypocrisy. You actually have a white only in restaurants and stores. You can see it. They look down upon blacks as less than human. And in Africa, they treat them as people who are subservient to them and being colonized by them.
Yeah,
That is what China is actually doing. And that is what they're being allowed to get away with. But I believe the inability of the West to have stopped them, or the unwillingness. The ability was there, but except for Trump, they never used it. I believe it is God's judgment on the Western world for having turned away from the faith of their fathers.
Yeah. Let me insert something real quick to make sure those who are watching live on Rumble, on YouTube, on RTN, we're taking questions on Rumble. So thank you guys for watching. We're taking questions on Rumble. Send your questions. We're going to put these two gentlemen under fire at the end. So hope you guys don't mind some heat coming in the form of questions. So we'll put we usually put Jacob under fire. Gert, you can share the fire with them, and it's for a short time. Fire questions that you guys answer them, and we'll be done with the show. So if you guys want to send those questions to Tim, we appreciate it. Gert, you live in a country where they are very open to all kinds of sexualities. In fact, you and I talked about it at one time that it was one of the first places that embrace homosexual marriage, and very open.
Yes.
And we go back to that. So share a little bit of what you see in Europe and how you see even with the military and how they promote this stuff.
Yes. Well, Holland is a very liberal country, as it would be said, and they are very proud, and that's also why this parade is called the Pride in the Amsterdam canals. It's very, for us, of course, infamous, but it's well known around the world. But they are very proud that in 2001, the first official gay couple marriage, both to men and to women, was in 2001 in Amsterdam. So, and since then, it's been, I've been thinking about it and also reading about it and hearing about it. There's three things that a government can actually do in terms of certain behavior. It can forbid it, it can allow it, and it can force it onto the people. Now, until when I'm 53 years old now, so when I was a little child, it was still in a world, I was living in a world here in Holland where homosexuality was something that was rare, that was unnatural, that was not accepted generally. But all the way up to 2001, I must have been, let me quickly count, about 23 years old, something like that. Then that first gay couple marriage came, 2 men, 2 women. So that's where the government turned into allowing it. But now we have reached a period in time where we are forced to also accept it. And it goes so far here in Holland that even in is it called elementary school, toddlers 4 or 5 years old, they already get, education about it, very liberal women mostly, teaching the children, young children, that it's okay, if you want to ask yourself if you're in the right body, maybe you're in the wrong body. I'm talking 4 or 5 years old here. Maybe you're in the wrong body, and also they're educated on homosexuality and all kinds of bisexual, asexual, pansexual, all those stuff as young as the age of 6, 7, up to 8, 9, 10 years, where they actually openly are taught how to have intercourse and oral sex, and it's just gross. How do you say that? It's disgusting. It's really disgusting. So yeah, and in terms of the military, it's also in every layer of society here in Holland. Of course, officially it's called the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but I tend to always say Holland. It's like how do you say that? It's like a cancer. It's spreading, and it's spreading aggressively, and progressively. So yeah, it's I remember Jacob had some teachings years ago in which he, although he never proclaims he's a prophet, but it was very prophetic, because he said it will be more and more militant. Is that the word? Militant. It will be more and more militant. And I think, sad to say, is that Holland is one of the foremost countries, that is the most liberal in those kinds of things, So yeah, it's just it's outrageous. It's really heavy stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Let me piggyback on what you said about spreading, because this is a big issue in Europe, and it's becoming a big issue in the United States. Is the Monkey Pox issue. They might as well call it Pride Pox, because it does affect about 98% of gay men. And Monkey Pox, it's spreading rapidly among that community. But Europe doesn't curtail it. San Francisco's called a state of emergency. New York's called it a state of emergency. And of course, San Francisco, which might have been called Sodom by the Bay, it's the public officials say, yeah, we know there's a problem, but we're not going to stop them from doing, their thing. And they have this fetish, kink and fetish festival where they dress up like animals and they do all kinds of horrific things. But Sodom is there, and politicians are encouraging it, despite an emergency because of a disease spreading rapidly. They do nothing about it, but to just continue to promote an abnormal behavior. And so, my concern is, their governments are talking about more lockdowns at the end of the year, and yet Pride Pox or Pride Month or the stuff never got any restrictions. They continued on with it. In Germany, you're able to change your gender every year, just about. The new law, a diverse society, right? Here in California, you can teach kids, just like Gert was talking about different sexualities, different pronouns. Governments are just demonic in this, absolutely gone berserk in terms of sexuality, diverse sexuality. Jacob, I think Gert's talking about Not Even a Minion. I think that's the one you did a while ago. Is that
Not
right,
Even
Gert?
a Minion, yes, correct. The teaching's not even, and we have a version of it that we did in Israel at Sodom, or the area of Sodom, near was today called Ambokek. So yes, Not Even a Minion. M-I-N-Y-N.
Yeah, they're promoting this, and people have to listen to that. But they're just demonic. I mean, absolutely. I've seen the. This is a side note. You guys remember the Commonwealth Games that just started? The inaugural, inaugural day, the inauguration day was just a few Tuesday or something, and they had this beast come out, this big bull, and there's a woman who appeases it among all these people that began to worship this giant mechanical bull. Then this woman appeases it. She gets on top of it, rides the beast, as you would call it. So you can see some of this biblical imagery, right? And then everybody falls down and begins to worship it. Now, it was supposed to be this play, this theatrical play, and all these things are in it, but you can't, as a Christian, you couldn't even watch 5 minutes and could not think of the book of Revelation. Jacob, your thoughts on this Commonwealth game up in Birmingham? Crazy. I mean, it's just all the Commonwealth countries were there participating in these games, sort of like Olympics. And then they have a drag queen coming down upon the beast. It was just wild. I'll leave it up to you.
Let's remember, in the first century, the Roman emperor put, of all people, Herod the Great in charge of the Greco-Roman Olympics. It was infused, that society, that culture was infused with homosexuality, lesbianism, and bisexuality accepted as normative. Okay, it was accepted as normal. And the Olympics were obviously infused with religious symbol, with polytheistic religious symbolism. Gods of war, gods of strength, this kinds of thing. There'd be sacrifices to these gods. It is simply the repaganization of Europe and of Britain. It's simply the repaganization. It's what happened in pre-Christian or pre-Judeo-Christian Britain. It's what happened in pre-Judeo-Christian Europe. It is simply a reversion back to what it was in the New Testament. We've talked about this before in some of our teachings on the book of Romans.
Very good. Gert, you got to see some of those pictures. I mean, what are your initial thoughts on the Commonwealth Games and the opening ceremony?
Yeah, well, it goes from bad to worse, really, and you know, they use a lot of symbols. You know, if you look at the where's it in Stuttgart, you know, it's referring to the Tower of Babel, and there are several places where there's also that bull, you know, with the woman riding on it, and with all kinds of these festivals, but also. I don't know if you know, but a couple of years ago they celebrated the making of the tunnel somewhere in Switzerland, you know, and that was really satanic rituals, all that, you know, and people think I think that even some of sorry.
No, I showed Jacob the video of the opening of the I forget what the tunnel's called, the Holland something tunnel.
Yeah.
You know what it is?
Yeah,
it was wild. It looked like an occult thing.
So that's the point. So and in a sense, probably very few politicians were like astonished, but most of them actually know very well what it's all portraying, what it's depicting, because it's just Satanism, really, what you see.
Yes.
You know, all the symbols, all the occult science and everything. So it goes from bad to worse. You can see it also with the. What's that called? The bowl, you know, your sports event in America, you know, the Super Bowl in the break. They all Madonna did it one time, and she even called it the Holy of Holies and everything. Well, if you're not aware of it, you would not realize it. But it's all, I believe, it's all really orchestrated, you know, by a very demonic, satanic, really elite of the world controlling everything. And there is a very good documentary. It's made by a Dutch guy. I don't know if you heard of it, but he goes down to all the branches of all products that we use. He says from the minute we stand up, you know, we wake up and we stand up, the mattress that we sleep on, the shampoo that we use in our hair, the food that we eat, the car that we drive towards our work, etc., etc. Everything is owned by just a very couple of just 2 or 3 companies. I think Blackyard. What was it called? Just a few companies, you know, controlling everything. I mean, like the electronic industry, the metal industry, the traveling industry, tourist industry, everything is just owned by just a couple of companies. So yeah, in this, there was a time. This was back in 2007, 2008, where I already listened to hoe zeg je dat ook weer? Klokkenluiders. You know. What's it called? People that bring the alarm. They work for the company and they sound the alarm. What's it called?
Whistleblowers.
Whistleblowers. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. I was already listening to whistleblowers then from the pharmaceutical industries. They already said that there would become a time that they would make vaccines, not in order to heal us from some epidemics or something. No, to make us more vulnerable to epidemics coming afterwards. Already, wow. That's already in 2007. Wow. So for me, it was just, you know, everything is just so connected. Yeah. Economics, politics, science. Now, the biggest company in Holland that provides school books, books for high schools, is now owned by George Soros. I mean, you know, so I remember that teaching, or the conference from Jacob a couple of years ago, where he explained the difference between educera and Jacob, fill me in, please. Educera and the difference between learning how to think and learning how not to think.
Yeah, education and indoctrination.
Yeah, but the I think the Greek word,
Educera
was one. Or Latin, sorry. The Latin word was educera was one.
Yeah,
and then there was another, educa, very similar to it, but the one means learning how to think,
yes.
And the other meant just to be brought up as a slave, really, and just doing well. Marco, that is just for me how I see it. It's just, if you can connect the dots, all the instruments, all the means that Satan has in his hands, and I'm always referring to 1 John, I think it's 1 John 5 somewhere, where it says the world is in the hand of the wicked one, and the Revelation says where the whole world is deceived. And of course, when Satan says to Jesus, if you I can offer you a shortcut, just kneel down and I'll give you everything. Look, all the kingdoms in the world, they're mine. Well, although he's the father of all lies, he was not lying because he definitely knew that he was talking to God. So it's no use lying to God, of course. So, I always think of those scriptures, we're just moving ahead towards the last days, really, all the perilous times that really has to come yet here in Holland, in the Western world. You can see it little by little, if you now speak out against homosexuality and against the LGBT. I always get confused, but all that, perverse community. That's how they should call it, perverse community. That's just PC, perverted community. That would be a better. So yeah, it's just and times go fast now, huh? It's like a spiral. A spiral in the top of the spiral, the circle is still a little wider, but the faster you go down, the more little the spiral gets. So, and I believe that is really the times we are in. I mean, even we're heading fast towards the Great Tribulation. It's just all the signs are there. Yes.
Another thing the governments are promoting, we just had a vote here in one of our states, was Kansas. Kansas voted not to amend their constitution, which allows for abortion as a right, I guess you call it, pro-life and people that want to save babies. They wanted to amend that constitution, say value them both, protect both. Whenever medical decision needs to be made, you have to value the mom and the baby. Kansas voters said, no, we don't want that. We want to abort babies. So they, to the delight of Joe Biden and the Democrat Party here, they don't want to value both. They want to just, they don't even want to value the mom either. That's a total misconception there and a lie that they want to protect women. But Joe Biden celebrates, wants to continue to promote out-of-state travels for abortion. Any thoughts on it? I know we got to move on to another subject, but I just wanted to bring this up because abortion activism is huge here, especially after the Dobbs case, the Roe versus Wade overturning it. Jacob, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Gert.
As we know, the repeal of Roe versus Wade only said this is an issue for voters to decide, not unelected judges. And because there's no constitutional basis for the federal government to decide, it should be decided by the states. Well, the first state, a red state, a Republican state, a so-called conservative state, voted for abortion. It's what I've always said. These Christians who are trying to, I've been saying this since Ronald Reagan, these Christians who are trying to identify the Republican Party with Christian values or Judeo-Christian values or biblical values, or the party of righteousness, or the party that Christians should support. It is a myth. It is a lie. A Republican is nothing but a Democrat who sits on the opposite side of the aisle. There's no difference. Now, are there conservatives who are in the Republican Party? People like Ted Cruz and Governor DeSantis? Yes, but the Republican Party stinks. It is nothing but hypocritical. When you read something I'm going to be talking about on Word for the Weekend, when you read God's judgments that are predicted against Judah and against Israel before the Assyrian and the Babylonian captivities, respectively, in Chronicles and in Kings, it shows you what the corrupt kings and leaders were doing. But the message of the prophets like Jeremiah and Hosea and Amos, it's what the people were doing. The idea that by changing the leader, you're going to change the spiritual character of a backslidden people who've turned away from God and don't care about his word is absurd. Now, don't get me wrong. I voted for Mr. Trump. I don't like Biden, but I pray for him just because he's the president, that he doesn't hurt the country any more than he's doing. Those prayers have not been answered thus far much, but I pray that God removes these people like Pelosi and Schumer and Biden and Harris and so forth. Of course I do. But I don't believe that salvation is going to come from an election or from a political change. The Republicans have had control of both houses and the White House and changed almost nothing, with the exception of Donald Trump. No Republican president has ever kept his promises or done what he said he's going to do. They just haven't. They really have not. Remember, Ronald Reagan appointed a radically pro-abortion justice to the Supreme Court who ordered the 10 Commandments, wrote the decision ordering the 10 Commandments out of the judicial building. Sandra Day O'Connor. This was Reagan's doing. That judge who outlawed Proposition 8 in California against the Democratic will of the people. He was a Republican nominated to the bench by Reagan and appointed by Bush. Those who look for salvation through a political means, they're not thinking correctly because they're not thinking scripturally. They are not thinking correctly because they are not thinking scripturally. Oh, we're going to take over the government and we're going to bring godly. This is basically Reconstructionism. It's the same kind of thinking as dominion theology and kingdom now theology, over-realized eschatology. It is all rubbish.
Yeah, and there's
The
plenty of
nation, and if the people don't repent, it doesn't matter what kind of government they have, they're going to get the government they deserve. A red state, a conservative Republican state, voted to kill babies. What does that tell you?
Yeah, it tells you that Kansas is a lot more liberal than you think, even though they claim to have Christians and conservatives there. Well, yeah, there may be some there for sure, but not enough to overturn that. Gert, in terms of Netherlands and Holland and Europe and abortion there and some of the laws there, maybe someone not accustomed to and not familiar with. But I mean, I know that you're pro-life, you're pro-saving babies and stuff, and you see this stuff in America that's crazy. But how does, from the Netherlands perspective, being in Europe, how do you guys see it? What's the perspective there in terms of abortion and what they see in America with this craziness with the Roe v. Wade?
Yeah, well, generally here in Holland, even among so-called Christians, abortion is just accepted somehow, you know. So I think if you accept abortion, then you don't know God, because that's for me it's just a paradox. You know, they started in 1971 in Arnhem. Arnhem is a familiar town because the Battle of Arnhem, you know, was the one they lost, the Allies, in World War II when they came up from France. And the Germans, the Nazis, stopped them at Arnhem. So that's the place where they, since 1971, first illegally started adopting babies. But then soon after that, you know, there was a law, and probably one of the first countries in Europe that, you know, that it was legal to just adopt babies. And generally, generally speaking, I think the majority in Holland is just in favor of, as they call it, women to have their own rights. And I'm always thinking, yeah, but what about the right of the baby?
That's
You know,
right.
and it's so it's just another characteristic, I believe, from Holland. You know, known as a very liberal country. And with all the, you know, not only abortions, but, you know, of course, our drugs policy, you know, and there's so many things that we claim, that the Dutch claim to be so liberal. And abortion is just one of those, you know, on that list of very unbiblical and things that God really hates. You know, it's just outrageous, really.
No doubt. And of course, these things we're talking about, and they're not in isolation from each other. We talked about LGBTQ plus, we talked about army, we talked about wars, we're talking about the murder of innocent, especially the babies. All has to, you know, funnel into the world's in a very, very precarious state, especially economically. And I want to switch gears to the economic side. I want to get Gert's perspective too, because here in America, we got the Rasmussen poll. Even Democrats know that the economy is in shambles. We have our government that is changing definitions, literally changing definitions of what a recession is. We were told not what a, you know, we were in a, you know, we're going into hyperinflation, inflation. Oh, no, it's transitory. Then they change the definition of a recession once it hits. This government are lying through their teeth. They don't know what they're doing. They're demonically possessed. They are judged. The judgment of God is really coming hard. Even the White House got a lightning strike the other day. It killed 2 people, unfortunately, but it was, I'm not making any like a sign or anything, but it's just this bizarre world that we live in. And yet we claim that, you know, nothing's wrong. Says the White House, nothing's wrong. They're attempting to change everything. At least the UK is saying we're going to hit a recession and we're going to hit about 13% inflation, which is maybe more. We're in negative growth for the next year or so. Maybe expecting riots because of the energy crisis in Europe, in the UK as well. So any one of you want to take the first one? And of course, Gert, we want to hear from you about Netherlands, the farmers, what's going on there, the war on farmers and what they're doing against farmers there. So maybe we'll go to Gert first and we'll go to Jacob after. Gert, you can speak from your perspective, Netherlands, give us an update on that, and we'll go to Jacob.
Yes. Well, the farmers, of course, there's no doubt that Rutte, that's the name, of course, probably you know from our first minister or prime minister, is just another disciple of Klaus Schwab, really. So the farmers altogether has a lot of country, a lot of land, you know, soil here still in Holland. And of course, they still have a very big part of the food and milk production. So if I was a big farmer, then I would be really feel betrayed, because for the last decades, I think 2 decades at least, you know, the government has been putting all kinds of rules and regulations to make farmers make their company and their business sustainable. They invested tens of thousands of euros, maybe even hundreds of thousands of euros, and now they all of a sudden come with this nitrogen policy. You know, they say that the nitrogen emission is just too high, and they need to reduce their stack. Cattle, is that? I think cattle is it? Yep. Cows, and especially cows, but also pigs and everything. Now let me see if I can share this with you guys. This is the Netherlands, and you can see that the dark red parts, it says that more than 70%, some places like here in this area, it's called the Veluwe in Holland, and also here in the we call it the east. This is also the east. This is more of the northeast. They have to reduce their stack from 70 to 90%.
Wow.
Well, I mean, if you have a farm, if you are a farmer, a peasant, and you have like let's say 100 cows, and you have to reduce that with 70%, all you have left is 30 cows. And this is after a period where you have been invested so much money, obligated by the government to make your company sustainable.
Wow.
So there's all kinds of actions now in Holland. They this is actually a custom from the Nordic world. Nordic, is it? Yeah. Shipping world, from centuries ago, and they turned their flags upside down. And this is like a sort of sign. Here is a picture. Let me see if I can share that.
It's like a sign of distress, right? Like a sign
of SOS, really. It comes from ships did it. If they were in trouble, then they would turn their flag upside down. And there are actions in the whole of Holland. Most people support these kind of actions, and there are some farmers, they even called out, how do you say, they called out, or they made a independent state, which of course is kind of nonsense, because you cannot create a republic in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. But what they did is they replaced all the the places where the name of the village or the city, they replaced it with this. It says welcome in the farmers' lands, plural, farmers' lands. So just today they had a conversation with Rutte. Of course, it turned out to nothing, because what they really would like to do, if I can see, I don't know if you heard of it. Oh, let me quickly get it for you. They the tri-state city. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Okay, this is a plan that's been going on for years, and you can hear it now just more frequently, more often. What they want to do is they want to make, here it is, they want to make a very big city out of the most of Holland and part of Belgium, Brussels, and then here Cologne.
Cologne.
Is that how you say it in English? Cologne?
Cologne.
Yeah.
Cologne, because in Holland we say Keulen, and in German it's Köln. So this is what they want to do. They call it the tri-state city. Now, how can they do that if the farmers still own so much country, so much land, and still own so much of the milk and food production? Of course, they don't say that this is the plan, the agenda, but it doesn't take much speculating to realize that is the end goal of this corrupt government. So all kinds of actions now from the farmers. They put big hay bales on highways and stuff. They should be careful, I think, because you might, most people in Holland support the farmers, but if you have more like these kind of actions, and people get I don't know, they get hurt, not really hurt, but they have obstacles with it, going to their work and stuff, they might lose sympathy from the public opinion here. So there's really a lot going on, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally convinced that there is an agenda to try to get the land and also the milk and the food production from the farmers to build this big city in Holland, the tri-state union. I will show the picture one more time. This is what I believe the end goal. Amsterdam, of course, the fourth airport in terms of cargo. Of course, we got the biggest harbor of Europe, still Rotterdam, where we will have our services, by the way, as I already announced. And then, of course, Cologne, and then Brussels and Antwerp, So the tri-state city, Holland city, some might call it.
Yeah, incredible. Now, Mark Rutte, the prime minister there, the president, he's a disciple of Schwab. No doubt, he's got
No
connections
doubt.
to, yeah, big time. So
Big time.
that is part and parcel of this new plan, this new Green Deals, these new ideas to basically, you can say it's going to lead to starvation, no doubt.
Yep.
Holland's had
Yep.
starvation by the Nazis, 44, 45, the winter of hunger.
Yeah. Hunger winter, yeah.
Winter, yeah. So this is part and parcel of the WEF ideas of control the world and bring about their cataclysmic event that they wrote
Yes.
about, even in the book. So
And also, Marco, I don't know if you guys already heard about it, because you were talking about the economic collapse that is arising now on the horizon. Because of course they've been talking about this digital coin, not only Bitcoin, but the new digital coin. Well, there's still a lot of money here in Holland, at least. I don't know in other countries, but Holland is one of the richest countries in the world, of course. And that's also because a lot of people have still a lot of saving money. Now, with the inflation going on and, with the economic collapse, probably even worse than the one in 2009, they're going to announce and propose, well, you know what? You can exchange your saving money one-on-one, but guess what? Where's your vaccination
card?
So those are the plans, They can exchange their money one-to-one into their digital coin, but you have to be vaccinated. So I'm for the last few months, I've been really going into rights here in Holland, and there's a whole nother subject. I won't get into it right now, but people should be aware that there's a lot of things. What is now going on is really illegal, but they just go on with everything that the government is just pushing through. In the media and with press conferences here in Holland and all that, while it's not even legal. And there's just a little group of people in Holland, a little bit growing, I think, that are aware of that, and that are aware that so many things that are, that we think are obligated by law is just actually not even true. And that is the difference between a human, God made human, and not persons, because person is connected to this social security number. The whole system is connected to that social security number. And once you identify yourself as a citizen, as a person, then you are automatically under that social security system. But if you refuse to do that and you remain in the level of a human, not a person, but a human, also referring to all, the human rights that the United Nations created in 1948, and all kinds of covenants came from it. If people would be aware of that they can actually trade and act as a human and not as a person, then we really have a chance for the time being. I don't have the illusion that we can go on and on, because the Antichrist will arise. But at least for the time being, there's some things that we can do, to stop all this nonsense and to make it a little easier, as long as it will last. It's just, if I look at it, this agenda, this G5 that was all introduced, those masts, is it the G5, yes. The new
antennas?
Well, it's connected. It's connected to the vaccination, because there's all kinds of stuff in the vaccination that connects. There's the 3 items: the vaccination, so the stuff that's in your body, your cell phone, and the G5 mast. And you know what? This is not conspiracy theory, because it's just openly on the website. It's amazing. I can send you all the links if you like. It's just openly there. You can just go on the internet, on the official site, and they just spread it out for you openly, like it's nothing, like it's amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, there's no doubt. They're pretty blatant about it, and it's no longer any kind of conspiracy. It's agenda driven, and of course, the WF has their agenda that they want to. Satan has his agenda. He's got his minions, as it were. But Jacob, tell me a little bit about the UK. Mr. Bailey, Bank of England, comes out and he says, "Look, we got inflation over 13%. We're raising interest rates. I think it was like a 1.75 interest rates. I think that's what it is, percentage." Which is pretty high up, the fact that they had it at zero for so long. And now they're saying, and the concern is widespread civil unrest because just people are not able to afford the heating energy bills, food. I remember the poll tax in the 90s was a big deal. Are we going to see this again? I mean, it's coming down to the last minute there.
First of all, what happened with the poll tax, if that kind of unrest happens again, it's going to empower certain political interests. That is what gave the Europhiles and the Conservative Party the muscle they needed to get rid of Mrs. Thatcher, who was pro-Brexit before there was Brexit. The Labour Party, of course, will seize on it. But I can tell you that the cost of public utilities and petrol, we call it petrol, gasoline, I'm speaking English, has gone absolutely astronomically high. I saw a lady at the petrol station on back of me day before yesterday. She put just 10 pounds worth of petrol into her tank, and it was just a matter of seconds. The petrol is much more expensive here than it is in the United States, and the taxes on it are much higher. It's gotten to the point where people are just not able to make these kind of payments. They're going to citizens advice bureaus. They're looking for social benefit. They're looking for ways out of these things. Rents are going up. General costs are generally going up. There's one thing I will say for the Bank of England. Unlike the Biden administration and unlike the Fed, they're telling the truth. Biden says it's 9.1%. The CBI and these things, they're lying. There's basic commodities and essentials that they don't even include in their estimates. If it's 13% in Britain, it's at least that in the United States.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So at least the Bank of England is somewhat telling the truth, as opposed to Powers and the American Fed and Janet Yeltsin and Biden, who are lying through their teeth. Continuing with what Gert had been saying, we chatted a bit earlier among ourselves. If you wanted to know what Hitler was and what he was going to do, Churchill read Mein Kampf.
That's right.
He wanted it because he read his book. If you want to understand Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and woke and Black Lives Matter and Antifa, read Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. It's all there. Well, so too, if you read RESET, because YouTube is protecting this, they'll close you down. Read about what Schwab said.
Yeah.
Now, at Davos, World Economic Forum, this is what Schwab said. He invited Jinping, the dictator of China, to be the head of this new world, whatever you want to call it, because I don't want YouTube to be able to block it out. So, but you know what I'm talking about.
The WEF, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He invited, so you got somebody who occupies Tibet, who's threatening the Republic of Taiwan, who's got between 1 and 3 million ethnic Uyghurs in concentration camps in Western China, who's violating religious freedom and human rights of Christians or any kind of dissident, who runs a very corrupt party, and China is more responsible for pollution and global and CO2 emissions if you
Yeah.
subscribe to the global
Hydrogen,
warming,
yes.
than any other country. China is at the forefront of polluting and of greenhouse gases, as the greenies call them. And Schwab is calling upon him to be the leader of the World Economic Forum. A dictator, a man who's got 1 and 3 million Uyghurs in prison, a man who's occupying Tibet, a man who is threatening Taiwan, a man who's grabbing and building military bases on islands that don't belong to him, a man who's shooting missiles into the Sea of Japan and into the Straits of Formosa. And Schwab wants this super polluter, the polluter in chief, the generalissimo of pollution, to be the leader of the World Economic Forum. This is Schwab.
Yeah.
Well, the Schwab and his slobs, the Schwab slobs, Justin Trudeau, Ardern in New Zealand, Andrews in Australia, Rutte in Holland, the Netherlands, Zelensky in the Ukraine, Tony Blair.
Yep.
All of these people are Schwab slobs. Every one of them is a Schwab slob. Every one of them. They control most of the media, most of the social media, most of the governments. What they don't know is that they are building a throne for the Antichrist.
Yes.
Don't worry, he's coming.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know, Klaus Schwab, I downloaded a clip of a video from 2016 already, in which Klaus Schwab states that he expects in 2016 that within 10 years, so that's before 2026, most people will be chipped.
Yeah.
I downloaded it. I don't know if you've seen it, but that was already in 2016. So how can anyone not see that there is an agenda behind all this stuff?
Yeah, he talks about digital currency. He talks about a brain chip. He talks about reading people's thoughts, and I mean, it's quite a bit down the line that we're in this. Things are going to get really intense, and not to be a doomsdayer, but things are going to get worse before Jesus comes, and that's something every Christian ought to know that, and every Christian ought to be prepared for that. But we're talking about reality, where we stand today, and things are descending very fast economically. We're talking Netherlands, the number one exporter of food in Europe. We're talking about the U.S., the number one exporter of food. We're talking major crisis in the world. Latin America, we wish we had more time, but Panama, Argentina, all going through incredible economic decline. And what's their answer? Eat bugs, right? That's the world. That's the WF stuff, right? Eat bugs, get you to eat this stuff, right? Canada, the UK is already promoting it. Here in the US, they promote it. Or how about this one? You can, how about eating some human meat? Because we know the New York Times is all for cannibalism now. It's not that bad, not as bad as you think. And even celebrity meat, we we watched that video. Celebrity meat, it's weird, but it's real. It's demonic stuff happening right before in our society, making it normal. Or how about this one? How about you can live on a wall, a prison wall in the desert in Saudi Arabia? They might as well put you there now, and people are loving it. Jacob, any chances you get to live in that on the line in Saudi Arabia?
I've been to Saudi Arabia, and it's called Neom. And what MLB is troubled about is the long-term prospects of oil as the financial engine of Saudi Arabia. He sees what's happened in Dubai, and Dubai has emerged as the commercial financial capital of the Arab world, overtaking certainly Jeddah easily. And also he sees what's happening in Abu Dhabi, and to a degree what is happening in Muscat, in Oman, and in addition to his other problems. He needs to build something as far away from Iran as he can, on the opposite side of Saudi Arabia, away from the Gulf. He needs to build it there. but he needs to make it as far away from Mecca and Medina as he can to stop the Salafist clergy and the Wahhab from having the kind of influence they have in the rest of Saudi Arabia to make a commercially successful city of that nature. That would be somehow international. So where is he putting it? He's putting it in the biblical land of Midian, where Moses dwelt. He's putting it where Mount Sinai was, where the Ten Commandments was actually given.
Very interesting.
That is where he's putting it. That is a prophetic significance.
No doubt. No doubt. It's a bizarre, if you look at the video, if you watch the video, it's a bizarre video. They promise you to live in this utopia, but it's basically a cell in a wall in the desert, and it has all the renewables, and it's got this
and the cost of, forget heat, the cost of air conditioning that place. I'm talking in centigrade, I'm talking 50 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
I am talking 120 degrees Fahrenheit, day after day after day, in June, July, August, and September. You wouldn't believe the heat. What it is going to cost to just the electricity that's going to be needed for the air conditioning systems. That alone will be unbelievable.
Yeah. About 9 million people they believe that can fit in there. And all these Twitter liberals, the blue check mark guys, they're all wanting to move there. It's well, have fun. It's going to cost about $1 trillion to build. It wants to build more cities like this called super cities that won't have any, I guess you won't have any law, any particular law from any government except their own laws. It's a technocrat dream, I suppose. But that's the line. That's where it's going. That's where I guess they want to put people in there to reduce the square footage and the carbon footprint, which is a bizarre thing. As we finish, let's talk about something that's
the world's biggest oil producer worried about reducing the carbon footprint. What does that tell you? What does he think? What does he imagine he's going to get the $1 trillion to build it from oil?
Jacob, before we came on, and this is happening as we speak, Israel's under attack. They retaliated against other attacks in Gaza. They actually were able to strike a high-ranking within the Hamas group. I don't have his name right now, but a high-ranking military terrorist, and he was targeted in a building. People were killed. Unfortunately, there was even civilians killed because that's really where they hide. They hide within kids and children and schools and stuff like that. Immediately, I think within a few hours, there was a barrage of attacks coming from Gaza into Israel, into Tel Aviv, into other places. The Iron Dome went up. It's been overwhelmed by the attacks. It's still going on right now as we're getting some more updates as we speak. It is still going on. It is on the eve of Tisha B'Av. So I wanted you to go to Jacob, then we'll go to Gert. Tisha B'Av, what it means, and are you surprised this attack came, and where do we go from here? And then we'll go to Gert.
Well, it's happened on a Shabbos, on a Shabbat. And so the Israelis on a Shabbat have had to mobilize 25,000 reserves. They've mobilized 25,000 reserves. The Muslims, same as the Yom Kippur War, that you hit at a time when the people are occupied with religious issues and not expecting an attack. But that's just a strategy. What you see happening is the following. Hamas is organizing demonstrations and protests in the West Bank, demanding new elections to depose the Palestinian Authority, Arafat's old machine, led by, the old Palestinian, by the Palestinian Authority, by the OPLO, with Abbas and those people. So by going into this attack mode, they're hoping to be able to rally the Palestinian Arabs in the West Bank to rise up and want to join them and attack Abbas for not joining them in the quote-unquote jihad. But you can be sure of this. Iran pushed the button, gave the green light, gave the signal, gave the command. It was not the decision of Hamas. The person killed was Taser Jubali. They took him out quickly. The areas being hit are very close to Tel Aviv. Bat Yam is just south of Jaffa, of the ancient biblical port. Right to the south of Jaffa is Bat Yam. It's been hit quite badly, apparently. And also an area, a place I know very well, where there's a congregation of believers in Rishon LeZion. That is south east of Tel Aviv. So in terms of if it was Los Angeles, it would be like not just Anaheim, it would be like hitting Culver City or something like that. That close. Or if it's New York, it would be like hitting Jersey City or something like that, or Yonkers, something of that nature. That close. Or if it was like London, it would be hitting like Hounslow or something. That kind of proximity. So again, Iran is in control of this situation, but it is not just a pure terrorist attack or military attack. It has a political counterpart to it in Hamas trying to get control of the West Bank from the Palestinian Authority. And this is all at the behest of Iran.
Go ahead, Gert.
Yeah, well, I'm not too aware of things going on right there, in details. But what I do know, there was this, this was like 2 years ago, I think, 2 or maybe 3 years ago. We have every year we have this annual what's it called in English, the rethinking of the victims of the war, so Second World War. Okay. Memorial, thank you. It's an annual memorial on the 4th of May, and the 5th of May is Liberation Day here in Holland. So the mayor of Amsterdam now, Femke Halsema, and she is she was then the leader of this. Before this, she was leader of a left-wing, a very left-wing political party. Now, at this memorial, she was talking about how she, remembered all the bad things that happened to the Jews also here in Holland, and that we should never do that again, and all that stuff. In what she said in itself was, of course, very good, but people are so blind because even 2 months before that, and she then was still the leader, or at least the former leader of this party. This party voted at a conference or a convention or something from the party to support this organization, Palestinian organization, that had the destruction of Israel on their agenda. So I was so astonished by the hypocrisy that she was that she dare to put those words in the mouth, talking about how bad it was for the Jews, while 2 months before she was at the conventions voting, supporting a organization that wants to destroy Israel. So yes. I don't know too much in details of all the things happening locally, but I do know that in terms of political stuff, that it's spreading all around the world, supporting the Palestinian cause, which they don't know anything really of. It's just, that was for me. So I was disgusted. And I remember because I was sitting there with my father who passed away in January, and he was a very left-wing, man. And I remember I wanted to to really speak out about it. And look, I did mention it in a WhatsApp conversation 2 months or 3 months afterwards. He didn't have to say anything about it, but that is how astonishing it is that's in terms of political views, that is just spreading all around. Well, at least here to Holland, in this left-wing political party. It's really heavy. It's really bad.
It's incredible. And just today, 120 rockets already been fired into Israel, and of course the Palestinian Islamic Jihad are the ones behind it. There's concerns about Hezbollah getting involved in it, of course, and the IDF is trying to. They did neutralize Abdullah Kadum, one of the commanders of the Al-Quds Brigade. He's been neutralized, as according to the IDF. So the PIJ, as we call it, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, yes, anti-tank missiles ready to launch more fire onto Israeli targets. The IDF it's of course trying to neutralize them. So it's still going on even as we speak. They're still getting some up. So keep Jerusalem in prayer. Keeps these things in prayer. Jacob, before we take questions, there was an interesting video that we played at our church, CCOD, and showed it to you guys a little bit. It was by the Temple Institute, about the temple. Yes. And it's really fascinating to me to think that at a time like this, of course, it's all related to Jerusalem and to the Temple Mount, that Jews are being asked this question: will the temple change their life? Well, what do you think about the temple? Just the fact that they're asking this question in Jerusalem, it's to me such a marker of prophecy coming to pass, and assume other fulfillments of it. Real quick, Jacob, and then I'll give it to Gert after you. What do you make of it? I mean, have you ever seen this sort of fervor about the temple? I mean, I know there were some people that didn't really care too much about the temple, whatever, but for the majority, even atheist Jews are reverential toward having a temple there.
Yes, well, you'll find that even secular Jews would be against giving up the Wailing Wall. Most of them would be against giving up what's called the Kotel. They'd be more divided on the Temple Mount, but the nationalist sentiment is growing. I've often said that a temple could be built if Asher Kaufman's theory was right, that it was located 70 meters north of the Dome of the Rock, where the Dome of the Spirits presently is. That would fit the book of Revelation, chapter 11, like a glove, where don't measure the outer courts is given to the Gentiles. So the Dome of the Rock and the Mosque of Aqsa would stay Muslim. The temple would be built next to it on back of the present East Gate. If that were to happen and the Antichrist were to broker a false peace, that would give a Palestinian state and capital for divided Jerusalem. Enough Jews would agree to divide Jerusalem for the price of being able to rebuild the temple. The Orthodox would largely support it. That's what would happen. That could be the way the Antichrist will go. I've been saying this, however, for more than 25 years. When you read Revelation 11 and the tribulational temple, I'm talking about the physical, literal temple now, not the spiritual one. When Antichrist will be worshipped in backslidden Christendom. I'm talking about the literal building. That the price of a reconstructed temple would cause Israel to negotiate the division of Jerusalem. That is a possibility. It could very well be that. And we are seeing things going in that direction.
Gert, your thoughts, and then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, well, Jacob in this is really the expert, so I'm always open to what Jake. I remember that Jacob said some time ago that that the Jews are what they were calling out for Messiah come now, Messiah come now.
Yes. We want Messiah now. Yes.
Yes, we want Messiah now. So all these things, it's just so close. That's like Jacob said many times. I was born in this time. God could have made, could have taken or could have chosen another time, but He chose to let me be born this time. So at the one time, it's intriguing. At the one time, it's also a bit scary, because who wants to go through the Great Tribulation? But at the end of the day, it's just a sign that Jesus is coming soon. So I'm just focusing focusing on that, really.
Yes.
Jesus come, Maranatha.
Maranatha. Yeah.
Maranatha. All right. Well, let's put you guys under fire for a few minutes. Is that all right?
Yes.
Amen.
Get your hats on. Get your fire retardant suits on. Here we go. Under fire. Now this is for Jacob. Jacob, what do you think of the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine peace plan announced this week between Lapid and the King of Jordan?
Okay, you have to understand something, that the Hashemite regime of Jordan, of King Abdullah, he's named after King Abdullah I, who was assassinated by the Mufti's men in the Mosque of Aqsa for trying to make peace with the Jews. So there's a whole family history on back of it. I've met his father, King Hussein, when I was a young guy in Virginia, of all places. His father was always friendly to America and Britain, but he messed up in 1967 and he messed up in 1991 with the Gulf War. And both times those created problems for Jordan. Jordan has severe economic problems. It's got a lot of refugees compounding those problems from Iraq and Syria. But it has a very, very serious water shortage. Very serious. Jordan has to find solutions to its problems in terms of its population, in terms of its economy, and in terms of its lack of water. I can't think of a single country in the Middle East that has a more serious water crisis than Jordan does. So that was one of the reasons Jordan was keen to make peace with Israel, to be able to share the resources from the Jordan River and so forth. Be that as it may, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan is an artificial country created by Great Britain after World War I. It is a Palestinian Arab country with a Bedouin minority. They're all Muslims, they're all Arabs, but there's Bedouins and there's the ordinary Arabs. Bedouins are nomads. Okay. The Hashemites were from the tribe of Mohammed in Arabia. They come from Mohammed's, their ancestors were Mohammed's family. They came into Jordan from Arabia, okay? So you have an Arabian Hashemite regime with a Bedouin minority in a Palestinian country that's 70% Palestinian Arab. Remember, a two-state solution. There's always been a two-state solution. If you go back to the League of Nations in San Remo and what the United Nations inherited from them, what the British government said, what King Hussein of Jordan said, Jordan is Palestine, what Arafat said, Palestine is Jordan. What King Sharif before the Wahhab in Saudi Arabia said, Israel's for the Jews, this is for the Arabs. There's always been a two-state solution. This is just a variation on something that has always been known but lied about in propaganda and media. There is a Palestinian state and always has been. It's just that it has a non-Palestinian Arab government that's Hashemite.
Interesting. Jacob, what do you think about the top Turkish official reaching out to Libya this week, considering Libya is part of the Ezekiel 38 coalition against Israel?
It's the only Arab country named in that coalition, and it coincides with the fact that Putin and Erdogan are going to have a second meeting. And
interesting.
And Turkey is looking for Russian cooperation to put certain people out of business in northern Syria. Turkey wants to make military incursions into northern Syria. So they're doing that. But understand what's happening with Libya and Turkey. Israel, because of the Leviathan field, is in bed with Cyprus and Greece for the development of the oil and natural gas resources in the Leviathan field. Turkey is trying to counter that and make an outer sphere that would extend from Tripoli to the coast of Turkey. It is two powers in economic rivalry with each other, playing a political game. That is what is on back of Erdogan.
All right. Question for both of you. China has been building islands in the South China Sea, these artificial islands. What's the purpose of these islands? Gert, what's your take first?
In terms of military, I really don't have an idea, but I can imagine that, you know, certain islands, it's just to have a basics. I really don't know. I really don't know. I have to be honest, because
yeah, Jacob, what's your take?
Those islands, including the parasols, are mineral rich. And China, if one thing China needs, it's sources of industrial commodities, of mineral commodities needed for Chinese industry closer to China. That is one. Secondly, these islands are claimed by multiple nations, including Taiwan, including the Philippines, including Vietnam, and even Malaysia and Malaysia. What China is doing is going in there, taking these islands and expanding them. They're expanding the surface with landfill. They're making these islands bigger with landfill, and they're putting military airfields on these islands to control them in violation of international law and in violation of its pledge not to do so. Therefore, having lied to the world about everything from the Olympics to the Parasol Islands, that is the reason, of course, Mr. Schwab wants China to be the leader of the World Economic Forum. It's because he's a liar, and the Chinese are a better liar than he is.
Do you think China's naval expedition is inching their way into the Pacific toward the west coast of the U.S.? Jacob, what do you think? That they're inching way to
no country in history that's been a superpower has ever been a superpower without having a sizable blue water navy, not a coastal whitewater navy, a blue water navy. That is how Britannia ruled the waves. A relatively small country was so powerful. The Soviets knew this and tried to build a huge navy, bigger than NATO, in the 1970s and 80s, before the Soviet Union imploded. No nation has ever been able to be a superpower without being able to extend its naval power globally, not only to protect its shipping, but for gunboat diplomacy, to be able to threaten other people. Therefore, that is what's on back of Chinese naval expansionism. Would they like to be able to have enough submarines off the coast of the United States to threaten the United States with nuclear attack? Of course they would. The other thing to bear in mind is hypersonic missiles. The United States is trying to play catch up now. They've had some success with Russia and China. In a real war, hypersonic missiles would make aircraft carriers obsolete. You couldn't shoot them down and you couldn't stop them. You'd have to launch all the planes off the deck of the carriers before the missile hit. And if you had a submarine launch one that can get relatively close, aircraft carriers are becoming obsolete in an out-and-out conflict. Aircraft carriers would be obsolete now. They're okay for amphibious operations and ordinary airstrikes and things like this, but in a big war against the country with hypersonic missiles, aircraft carriers are a thing of the past. That is my opinion.
All right. With the increase of drag queens being invited to church events at churches, is this a precursor of some type of abomination of desolation?
That's obvious.
Yes, I do believe. Yeah, I do believe. Obviously, that is the case, and especially in Holland, it's so open and so widespread. But I was a couple of years ago. I was driving as a cab driver in Amsterdam, and then this pride was going on, and then I came to a church, and it has a big banner hanging down, and it says, "My God also loves gays." So I was thinking, well, that's not the God of Israel then. You know, so it's definitely here in I can only speak mainly for for Holland, of course. The mentality here in Holland, and in most churches now, like Jacob has been telling now for years, also the 5 main churches in England, but it also goes here in Holland. Most of them they accept totally homosexual pastors, women pastors, and etc. So yeah, it's definitely a foresign. I do believe that.
All right, Gert, this is for you. What are you and people in your region planning for food shortages this winter due to famines or shutdowns?
My sister actually is much into prepping. That's what they call it. I don't know if it's also there like that. Preparing, just prepping. My wife also is very much in favor of it, but I always say, okay, but then you prep for, let's say that you can store up something for 1 month and 2 months. And then after 2 months, then you're gonna trust God. So I'm personally, I always believe that God will provide if He wants to provide. So I'm myself personally, contrary a bit to my wife, I'm not really into prepping, because at the end of the day, even what you have in store will reach the end. You will reach a point. But then my sister had a good point. What about, for instance, in this case, my mom? My mom is now 74, and I have, of course, some relatives, and that got me thinking. So, yeah, in a sense, it's my wife has bought a water filter. There's some little stuff that you can do. Buy some food in cans, and which is what you can keep for a longer time. So it might be, although I personally do not really see all the need of it, but in terms of family members, especially when you have elderly people in your family, it might be good. And of course, water and stuff, it's always good to have in store. But then water is a lot of volume, so where will you store it up? And also, I remember Jacob was talking about Africa. You can get a Kalashnikov for $10 or something on the market.
Yep.
In a country where there's a famine. What are you gonna do when you're hungry and there's no food, but you have a Kalashnikov? So suppose that we are coming to a famine even here in the Western world. There's still a lot of, also here, there's a lot of weapons going on. So you can store up anything, even, have vegetables growing in your garden. But when you have like 10 neighbors who are hungry, how much of them will not enter your garden and steal your food? So yeah, it might be, of course, I'm not, it's not that I'm against it, but personally, I always believe that when you're in a situation of famine, God has allowed it, but when He wants to provide, He will provide.
Yes. Use common sense. Yes. Use common sense. But the ravens fed Elijah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
What type of bodies are we going to have in the millennium, Jacob?
Oh boy, I don't know how that relates to this. We have teachings explaining this. The people, we will have bodies as Jesus had when He rose from the dead. Right. The way Jesus' body was when he rose, that is the way our bodies will be. The people who were born in the millennium, however, the descendants of the survivors of the Great Tribulation, will have bodies as we do now, only they will have the longevity of Methuselah. People will actually live to be those incredible ages again. They'll be like bodies like ours, but they'll age much more slowly. Bioentropy won't take place, be retarded. Our bodies will be like the bodies of Christ. But again, we generally like questions to be related to what we discuss on a particular webcast.
All right. Well, last one, and it's related to that one. What happens to the nations of those people that don't follow Satan at the end of the millennium? Are they saved by grace?
again, that's not tonight's subject. All the nations is going to come under the influence of the Antichrist. It'll be Israel against all the nations. So I don't really understand the question.
It's at the end of the millennium. At the end of the millennium.
The end of the millennium with Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
There'll be a rebellion. Those who participate in the rebellion obviously will go to eternal perdition. The ones who don't will enter into the eternal kingdom.
Amen. All right. Well,
One last thing I'd leave you with.
Hold on.
Schroeder this week. Chancellor Schroeder from Germany is a terrible man. He's a friend, European leftist. Again, he's World Economic Forum. He is a friend of Putin, and he is secretly trying to broker an end to the conflict in Ukraine, where Ukraine would have to make sacrifices to Putin, and Putin will get out. Russia has gotten itself into a jam, has not fought as well as it thought. Its hardware has not performed as well as it thought. There's an embarrassment, no matter what they tell you. Putin is embarrassed that it's gone on this long. He hasn't gotten what he wanted. He's looking for a way out, but Ukraine cannot continue either. It is very interesting that one of the things being proposed, as Schroeder said, is something I said before the invasion. NATO should not have Ukraine as a member. It's too corrupt of a country. NATO should not have the Ukraine. It should be the way Finland was during the Cold War, or the way Austria or Switzerland is. It should be a total neutral country that would be neither part of Russia or part of NATO. It should be a total neutral country. And now, after all these tens of thousands of people have died, that's what they're talking about doing. It's unbelievable. But be aware of what Schroeder is doing. Keep an eye on him. He's not a good man.
Yeah,
There will be pressure. There will be pressure to compromise with Putin.
Yeah, they had a meeting.
And except for Britain, don't expect the countries in Europe to stand against China in any meaningful way. Britain will, because of Australia and America. The others will not.
Yeah. We just got word as we finished Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the DFLP. And I guess there's a faction, their military wing has just joined the Islamic Jihad military wing. So they're launching rockets as well into Israel. So lots of things to consider and keep in prayer this Friday night. So I'll leave you with that. Gert, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Dank je wel.
Graag gedaan.
So much great insight, and thank you for being with us. And God bless you. Such a blessing to be here. Jacob, it's always a blessing to be with you. Why don't you close this out today? Any final words, encouragement, any thoughts, any ideas? I'll leave it up to you.
You know, Matthew 24, Jesus said it all. You'll be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. None of these things should surprise us. Maybe the pace and the way in which they happen may surprise us, but the events themselves are not surprising. When you see these things happening, what does he say to do? Lift up your head, your redemption draweth near. Keep these matters in prayer, particularly the suffering church, and pray for the salvation of Israel. God bless and thank you.
All right. God bless you, Gert. God bless you, Jacob. God bless everyone.
God bless you all, man of God.
Such a blessing to have you. Such a blessing to be with you guys. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Davey. Thank you, Jonah. God bless you guys.
Well, blessings in Jesus, dear friends. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your prayers, your support, certainly, but above all, we appreciate the grace of the Lord in having you be with us. If you are blessed, edified, challenged, encouraged by what you have been hearing on Moriel, we would certainly ask you to subscribe, to give us a thumbs up, and to tell your Christian friends about us. And even tell your unsaved friends about us in the hope and prayer they will hear the gospel and become Christians. Thank you so very much. My name is James Straker Prash, Moriel Ministries. God bless you all.